Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Solar Opposite. Okay, so this episode, the Stockiverse Ray, is a fun one. First and foremost, it's another wall episode, so we get to kind of find out a little bit more about what's going on the wall somewhat. But also, this is an episode where Corvo tries to take the perfect family photo, and he doesn't get it right, so he invents a Ray to do it for him, and it doesn't work as intended. So, we'll get to the A plot, because the B plot's a bit shorter. But in case in the A plot, the thing is exactly what happens. Corvo is using a alien ray type thing to. He's using some sort of, I don't know. He's using some sort of sci-fi scythe type thing to trim the grass on the lawn. But also and also comments about the fact that Terry never lets him use it on his back moss, which pointing out that he would be able to clean it up really quickly. But then sees the neighbor that he talked to the past episode where they were asked to get a dog, and wonders what's going on, and he notes that the family seems to be kind of okayly sticking together. And sure enough, the guy once again pointing out that the dog didn't quite work in keeping his family together, but reveals that they're actually taking their annual family photo, which of course causes Corvo to become a little bit confused, wondering why they would take more than one photo. But of course they point out that the guy points out that the photo is to kind of he kind of subtly hints that since his marriage is going on the rocks, the family photo is the idea of trying to resemble some semblance of normal, when in actuality it's only a facade and their family is falling apart behind the scenes. But of course, Corvo is obviously very visibly confused, and of course, the guy does recommend the photographer that they hire, pointing out that she's one of the best, but also wonders why Corvo hasn't started doing photography pictures and family photos annually. And of course, Corvo just points out that he starts getting a little bit flustered at this point, because he points out that he obviously took the photo because he didn't want anybody thinking he was weird. But then realizing obviously it wasn't working, he then becomes somewhat unraveled and runs into the house, insisting that they take another family photo to kind of prove that they're normal. So of course, Corvo then proceeds to take the photo that they actually took. This photo was taken in season 1, like back when the pupil was yellow, so it's a little outdated. But otherwise, everyone pretty much looks exactly the same as they did back when that photo was taken, even though Corvo makes a funny joke about how they don't even look the same anymore. But of course the other Slurpians do reassure Corvo, pointing out that he seems a little bit distressed about the idea of being about the family photo, and that it's not really that big a deal. But Corvo insists that it is a big deal because it'll help them blend in and become more normal. Which of course they realize that he's talking about the mission, pointing out that he's just suddenly gotten interested in the mission again, even though Corvo admits that he never forgot about the mission, and he also eats this really bad junk food that the other Slurpians admittedly don't like, even though he admits it's a Slurpian delicacy, and it's frequently described as just being gross. Like, they frequently describe it as this gross thing that nobody would like. But of course, Corvo is stress eating because it's some of it, and They do eventually point out to them that if it means that much to him, they will in fact take the photo with him. So Corvo then proceeds to get set up in the backyard, and he gives everybody their Slurpian ceremonial robes, which only he consistently wears, and then proceeds to have everybody file outside. We find out that Terry has cut essentially has cut a boob window into his, so which of course annoys Corvo to no end. Well, Jessie is currently wearing a branded hoodie that she owns, pointing out that if she's going to be taking a photo, she might as well get some of her branding and merchandising deals in, and does demonstrate her new hoodie with way too many hoods. So, it's funny. Yumilak, of course, comes out dressed appropriately, and Corvo points out that Yumilak is probably the only one here who disappoints him the least, which Yumilak takes as a compliment and is very happy, but they ultimately do start lining up for the photo, and visibly they keep trying to do some sort of cool dynamic pose while Corvo is trying to be like, no, this is a straight family photo, you need to take this seriously. And of course nobody does, and eventually Corvo, after trying to wrangle everybody in and trying to get them to do what he wants, which obviously they don't do, Corvo gets visibly frustrated and just storms off. At which point he goes into the ship and does vent to Aisha about how the family photo isn't going well. And of course, he then proceeds to point out that he just needs to figure out some sort of way to, you know, make their family photo look kind of somewhat passable and presentable. At which point, Aisha reveals that she actually has stock photos that they can use and edit to make to actually kind of represent their ideal family photo. And of course, Corvo, after seeing one, points out that that's the one he wants, and then asks if he can borrow Ray so that he can physically make the Scorpions resemble the photo. And of course, Aisha points out that he's not allowed to do that. Pointing out that they can't just make a Ray for everything. Pointing out that it has to be focused, it has to be created, then focus tested, and also finally approved the design-wise before it ultimately works. But Corvo ultimately points out that she made a Ray to renew her Tubi subscription not too long ago, and admits that he's not really buying the whole renewal process type thing that she's trying to say, and the whole, you know, peer-reviewed, all that bullshit. He doesn't buy it one second, so ultimately, realizing she's been caught, she does decide to give Corvo the Ray, but ultimately tells him that to not say she didn't warn him. And of course, Corvo proceeds to immediately run downstairs with his new ray gun and blasts the family with it, even though Terry wonders if that new ray has actually been focus tested. And sure enough, they are kind of transported into a Mike TV style, as they describe it, a Mike TV style, you know, thing where they're kind of just pixelated into pieces. And if Corvo, immediately realizing what he's done, runs upstairs and tells Aisha what happened. And she then proceeds to tell Corvo that they're not gone. They're just in a pocket universe called the Stockiverse, which you know, is just a photo image thing. So of course Corvo wonders how exactly it is they're supposed to get him out, but of course Corvo, Aisha tells him that she can't just send him in willy-nilly, and asks him to wear a suit, wear a specialized suit, pointing out that if he breathes in the air of the Stockiverse, he'll ultimately get sucked into the Stockiverse and not be able to come out. So she proceeds to give him a suit, and also tells him that the only way to get transported into the Stockiverse is to shoot himself in the mound, as she puts it. But of course, Corvo wonders if there's any other way to do it, and she insists that that's the only way. At which point she shoots himself in the ray, and it obviously hurts like hell. At which point she reveals that actually he could have shot himself anywhere, and it didn't really matter what happened, pointing out that that's what happens when you don't listen to her. And of course, now transported into the Stockiverse, he proceeds to go on a quest to go and find his family, all in various themes, locations that make sense for the characters. First and foremost, obviously they're all stock photos, so it's just an empty void with all these stock images that are designed. But of course, the first one he finds is Jessie, who he doesn't, which of course she's currently zoned out and is not paying attention to anything going on around her. So of course Corvo realizes, and Aisha tells Corvo that he needs to figure out a way to connect with Jessie, but of course Corvo doesn't fully understand how to do that, pointing out that they never really, you know, talk or anything even remotely like that. So he obviously has no idea what to do, but then remembers that Jessie was trying to do some sort of brand. So after jogging his memory for a few minutes, he scribbles the brand on his helmet, and this causes Jessie to snap out of it after she realizing that Corvo is wearing her brand. But this, of course, opens up another problem that was completely unforeseen, and that's once they realize that someone is no longer under the influence of the Stockiverse, the people in the pictures come to life and start chasing people. So of course Corvo winds up putting a spacesuit on her, but of course they manage to escape and get into the next area, which is the sports section of the stock images, and Yumulak is here. And Yumulak, of course, is obviously very visibly getting into a sports game and not really not really caring about anything. But they do realize that they need to figure out a way to get him out. So they start thinking of ways that they can snap Yumilak out of it, and the only thing they can think of is to make him angry. So they start going on various subreddits and start reading some of the comments there, which of course doesn't work at first. They try to pull up some MCU stuff, which of course he just ignores. At which point they pull up the Paddington subreddit, which disturbingly a lot of people on that subreddit really want to sleep with Paddington in this version of this universe. But ultimately, Corvo then proceeds to read some of the hateful comments, which does snap Yumilak out of it, and they do manage to give him another safe spacesuit after they realize he's fine. But it's at this point where the other guys he was watching quote-unquote sports with then proceed to spring to life, revealing a monstrous thingamabob underneath their foam fingers, and they proceed to chase Yumilak as well. And this continues just a recurring theme where every time they go through, somebody, an evil stock image person comes to life and tries to attack them. And also, but then they proceed to arrive in the pet section, which obviously contains the Pupa because he's inconsistently portrayed as a pet sometimes, so he's obviously here. They do eventually find him, with Corvo adding that in the off chance they can't recognize him, he did write his name on the Pupa's bottom, on the off chance that they got separated, and he wandered off on his own. And eventually Yumilak does find the Pupa, but this causes all the animals in the Stockiverse to come to life again, and now all the pets are after them, so they go on to the fourth and final one, and obviously more people have started to gather at this point, but they're able to move on to the next section, where they do ultimately find Terry, who is currently in the life and wellness section, which makes sense for him as a character. But we do find out that he's in the process of not eating a salad. We find out that they're not allowed to eat salads in the Stockiverse because it's just holding a salad just tantalizingly away from their mouth. And they quickly realize that they need to find a way to snap Terry out of it. So Corvo initially tries to appeal to Terry's, interests. But when that doesn't work, he becomes frustrated and proceeds to stab Terry with a fork, which does snap him out of it. And of course, Corvo humorously claims that it was the power of love that snapped Terry out of it, but ultimately to just be like, oh no, you stabbed me with a fucking fork. What the hell's wrong with you? It's like, that's the idea of that. But ultimately, before Corvo can get the rest of his family out so they can leave, Corvo is suddenly attacked and his spacesuit is ripped open by one of the stock image people. And she introduces herself as a premium stock image person, and then proceeded to pull Corvo into the Stockiverse. He starts breathing in the air from the Stockiverse, and is given what he wants: a perfect normal family to take a picture with. And this of course causes everybody to realize that they really need to make it up to Corvo in some way. They quickly realize that they're not going to be able to appeal to him because this is what he wanted. He wanted his family to just pose normally for their family photo. So, but they then proceed to realize that there has to be some other way to snap him out of it. At which point they remember the really disgusting snack food that Corvo likes, and realizing that wondering how they're actually supposed to get some in the Stockiverse, with Yumilak of course pointing out that they likely don't deliver to an alternate dimension. Jesse eventually remembers that the Pupa had eaten some, and it takes him 1,000 years to digest literally anything, so he probably still has some in him. And Terry, pointing out that that's a good idea as any, they proceed to shake the Pupa open and get the snacks out of him. At which point they very much eat the snacks in front of him, in front of Corvo, and obviously they're visibly disgusted because the snacks don't taste very appetizing. And Corvo seeing that his family is in fact eating the snack food that he likes and knows that they don't, is moved and does try to leave the Stockiverse. But ultimately, they quickly realize that. But ultimately, Corvo does ultimately snap out of it. But it quickly becomes apparent that the Stockiverse doesn't want him to leave, because all the Stockiverse images ultimately converge on their one location and try to pull Corvo back through and into the Stockiverse image, while the rest of the solar opposites try to pull Corvo out, and they're literally tearing him apart. And ultimately, Terry proceeds to successfully save Corvo by pushing the one lady back through the other side, and puts a suit back on Corvo so he doesn't succumb to the Stockiverse anymore. But then they realize that they've been in the Stockiverse too long because now they have a branding on them, which of course causes them to become obviously very visibly concerned, and they realize they're not going to be able to come out. And of course, the lead Stockiverse lady does point out that now that they're there, that they're officially part of the Stockiverse, and that the Stockiverse will never let them leave. But ultimately, they realize they need to figure out a way to get out. At which point they realize that maybe Jessie has the way to do it, revealing that her brand might actually be the way to get them out. Pointing out that it's not a stock image if it's monetized. So yeah, of course, Jessie proceeds to demonstrate that by pulling out some stickers from her, her brand that she created. And when one of the characters is on brand, it becomes visibly obvious that that's the way to go forward, because he just explodes, but pointing out that he can't be on brand. So, and now realizing that's their way out, they proceed to fight off all the Stockiverse people by just sticking brand-related brand products on them, which is a funny little sequence, and I do like it. It's just this fun. It's just such a funny sequence. Just, oh no, I'm on brand, explodes. It's so funny. I love it. It's a great bit. But ultimately, after defeating all of the Stockiverse people, Aisha is able to successfully pull them out of the Stockiverse and declares that they made it. And of course, everybody then proceeds to apologize to Corvo, admitting that they really should not have, let the Stockiverse, that they really should have just taken his family photo seriously and not screwed around like he originally, like he was trying to tell them not to. But Corvo points out that he's also a bit at fault, pointing out that he was so concerned about the idea of the perfect family, having this perfect family photo, that he realized that actually what makes them a perfect family is the fact that they all have quirks and they're all unique. And that's trying to make them this static photo that literally is just the most boring thing ever, does not portray their personalities like at all. And so they ultimately do wind up taking another photo, but this time Corvo's the only one posed normally. Everybody else demonstrates their personalities in the photo, which of course Corvo admits isn't the ideal family photo, but it is a perfect one, and it does represent the perfect family. But ultimately, Terry does note that Corvo wonders if Corvo has been eating that junk food again that he doesn't like. And of course, Corvo points out that yes, he has. At which point, Terry points out that he stinks like something fierce, but admits that it is a character flaw and it is why he loves him. At which point, they share a kiss, and the rest of the family just kind of bails because they don't like seeing their familiar characters kiss. But in case, that is the B plot and A plot, and it has a really good lesson about family. The idea that perfect. Obviously, the Stockiverse is just this weird little concept that they came up with. Like, we're like, oh, this is where all the stock images that you find for photos are stored. But I do like the concept that they realize that actually the perfect family is the one that has their quirks and argues sometimes, but they love each other anyway. So I do like that as a lesson. But in case, the B plot of this one is a little bit more interesting. So yeah, the second is, so they're picking up where the last wall segment left off. They find a mysterious, what is it? They find this one of the guys from Sherry's side of the wall finds a mysterious note and proceeds to bring it back to the council. And we find out that the council is led by a crossing guard. He actually uses a sign to emote when emotion has passed and when emotion has been denied, which I do kind of like as a visual gag. It's really funny, but ultimately they do wind up passing and moving on a couple of different things before ultimately the guy that found the letter comes in, and of course he comes in and the crossing guard reads through the letter and realizes that they now have more information about what's going on the Bowinian side of the wall, which is that according to the letter, what is it? Sister Sisto is trying to make the wall colder to freeze everybody out. Like, that was something we learned in the previous episode, but it was in the last, or more accurately, the previous time we've seen the wall segment. But which of course causes Sherry to become upset, pointing out that they not only built a wall inside the wall, but are also kind of cutting off food supply lines, and it's and she claims that Sister was out to get us with pointing out that they're cutting off supply lines, not able to harvest food within the wall, being forced to ration, and now making it too cold for anybody to live inside the wall. This of course and she of course points out that Sister System needs to be stopped, but ultimately Crossing Guard disagrees with that sentiment, pointing out all the other things. And of course we meet a new guy named Jimmy, who is kind of a minor character in this episode, at least as far as I know. But we're introduced to a guy named Jimmy, and Jimmy proceeds to also kind of back up the Crossing Guard. But Crossing Guard proceeds to point out that they can't just go to war, pointing out that they're currently at an era of unprecedented peace. He proceeds to go on to explain that even though the wall is built up and obviously the Bowenian search is causing problems, for the time being everything is peaceful. He points out that especially and it's important to maintain that peace considering everything else that's gone on within the wall, the war, the Mantis uprising, the serial killings, all the other list of other things that they've had to deal with up until this point since coming into the wall. But which of course causes Sherry to become upset, especially since she points out that Sisto has her baby. She obviously wants her baby back. That's a main motivation for her. But of course, the Crossing Guard decides that if Sherry isn't so insistent on the idea of them going into the wall, they'll put going over the other side of the wall, that they'll put it to a vote. And of course, the motion does not carry, which causes her to become upset. But of course, the Crossing Guard also points out that they actually do have that it'll be fine for the time being, pointing out that they actually get their heat from an old Game Boy unit. They've actually built a Game Boy unit into the wall and are using it to heat the wall because, when Game Boys get... I think the idea is that when a Game Boy gets really hot, it overloads and overheats, and then they have a way to transfer that heat into the rest of the wall. So for the time being, they're fine. But of course, Sherry just declares that they're cowards and proceeds to go for a nightly walk. But is haunted by the various images of her possibly never seeing her family again. So she's obviously upset and very visibly unraveled when she suddenly sees Jimmy weirdly climbing up to the top of the wall and checking in with two people before leaving. And of course, this causes Sherry to become skeptical of Jimmy, and she proceeds to tail him. And sure enough, she sees him moving supplies, which causes her to become a little bit confused and thinking that Jimmy might be a spy. Pointing out that was a possibility she brought up in the meeting, that there could be a spy on their side. But she ultimately brings her findings to Crossing Guard, who of course initially confuses it with Timmy, with another guy named Timmy, who only appears here for a bit. Sherry literally admits that they didn't even know they had a Timmy, which causes Timmy to become angry and leave. But ultimately, she explains that she thinks Jimmy is a spy and is currently stealing resources and is trying to steal and/or poison resources, which of course Crossing Guard points out is preposterous, pointing out that Jimmy was a big fighter within the wall in the first war within the wall. And so he insists that Jimmy couldn't possibly be a spy because he's the most loyal person of anyone there. But of course, not really buying that, she proceeds to go and confront Jimmy herself when she realizes Crossing Guard isn't going to help. So she immediately goes to confront Jimmy when she sees him once again moving resources and hoarding them, and immediately goes to confront him and tackles him, with Jimmy, of course, being very visibly confused as to what's going on, at which point Crossing Guard shows up and they proceed to kind of bicker back and forth about what's going on. As it turns out, Jimmy, after Crossing Guard mediates, and as it turns out, Jimmy never had any sort of sinister intentions, despite Sherry obviously being visibly trying to claim otherwise. And as it turns out, he was trying to actually engineer a movie night. As we find out, if you go to a very specific point of the wall, you can actually see they can actually see Yumulak's laptop on his bed, and with all of his illegal downloads. So and of course, after confirming that, Sherry realizes that she was in the wrong, and and of course she is told to go home and take a rest, since she's obviously unraveled and very nervous about the fact that anyone could be an enemy. Like, she is obviously very visibly unraveling. So with that, she goes home. But in any case, we then see a cut to we then proceed to see a cut to the Game Boy. Actually, specifically, it's in between two segments. But we then proceed to go to two people working on the Game Boy. They're currently playing Tetris to generate heat for their side of the wall, and they do comment about how difficult Tetris is. About how as you line up lines, the Game Boy does start generating a lot of heat. But and of course, the two co-workers then proceed to point out that it's almost quitting time, and one wonders if the other will be will be coming to the party that they're throwing. But the guy admits that they have a long day playing Kirby tomorrow, so he admits that he probably will not be doing that. So, but in any case, as they're about to wrap up and finish their shift, which is mostly just them playing Tetris again, as I admit, suddenly there's a visible steam coming out from the back of the Game Boy, and they proceed to bring somebody in to look into it. And of course, we find out that somebody has used a Mentos and Coca-Cola to fizz up the wires and cause the Game Boy to shut down. And since it's a major part of their infrastructure, it's clearly a targeted attack. But and this of course causes the crossing guard to finally believe that what Sherry is saying was true about how since someone obviously knew that the Game Boy was part of their infrastructure, it's clear that Sister Sisto deliberately attacked it, and is obviously trying to shut down their side of the wall. And now left with no other choice but to let Sherry lead a recon team into the Bowinian side of the wall. He proceeds to just kind of lament to kind of lean into her, attack into her demands, which is to send somebody over as a rescue team to find Paisley, save her, and dismantle Sisto's entire reign in the wall. So, and of course they proceed to do that and discover her, and they can proceed to go to a giant baseball that has a hole through it, which is designed to get them in and out through the wall. And of course, Crossing Guard then proceeds to kind of give them orders about what they're supposed to do, is to get in, get out, and find out what Sister Sisto is planning and take her down. But also does start speaking in rhyme to kind of cover up what their plans are, which of course Sherry isn't entirely sure how that'll help, but he then proceeds to tell them to go through the hole in the baseball, and that he'll see him on the other side. And of course, some people are obviously very visibly confused as to what he was talking about, but as they're going through the hole in the baseball, Sherry discards a wrapper in her backpack and continues onward, and it's discovered that she was the one who put the Mentos in the Game Boy, and that's how the episode ends. So this side of the story kind of reveals that this part of the episode reveals that Sherry is very desperate to save her daughter, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get her daughter back, even if it means sabotaging her side of the wall. That's obviously going to come up at some point when because I think the next episode after this is going to be a wall episode based on the description. But of course, the wall is going to be of course, it is interesting that she is that desperate to save her daughter that she will literally fake an attack to get somebody to do what she wants and manipulate them into doing what she wants. Like, that is obviously not a good thing, but she's obviously motivated to save her daughter. That is a big thing. Obviously, the entire Bowinian Church's regime is based on the fact that Paisley is some sort of magical, quote-unquote, miracle child. So, they obviously visibly want her to be the center of the religion, even though obviously Sherry wants her daughter back, and that's the big thing that they're trying to do. But ultimately, this is a fun episode, and I did enjoy it. It's got a lot of fun gags to it. Obviously, the whole thing with the Game Boy generating heat is hilarious. But, and obviously the entire thing about them defeating the Stockiverse people with branding is so funny as well. It's such a great sequence, and I love it. But, yeah, ultimately, this is a fun episode. Do highly recommend it, and I highly recommend checking it out for yourself. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to follow me on Discord if you want to have discussions, or over and down in my comment section. Please go do that. Be sure to go and check out my Twitch. I stream Saturdays and Sundays. Please go check that out. Go check out my Discord. Link is down in the description. Well, we've already discussed my Discord, but go check out my Discord anyway, because I do watch-alongs over there. If you want to see those, go check those out. Links down in the description, as always. And be sure to go and check out my Patreon as well. It helps support me. I would appreciate that. Please go check that out. And also, finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this video. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new, or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!